Hey guys, Hal here. In this video we're going to be doing a quick overview of the editor. So this assumes that you've got the editor installed and the mod installed and everything's running fine, it's been set up. We're just going to concentrate on the editor itself. So if you click the Prefab editor button and wait for it to load up. I'll start by going over a quick overview of the controls. So in the top left up here you have the undo button. The one to its right is the redo button, so if you make mistakes while you're editing you can just undo them and put them back if you want. Mode, this is pretty important, it can catch a lot of people out. Edit mode is where you're going to be making changes to the blocks in the prefab editor, so it lets you add things. Info, if you click on that, gives you information about specific blocks that you click on. So you see the information down in the bottom left here, and you can make changes to that specific block. We'll run through that in a bit. And copy mode lets you copy parts of the prefab to other parts. So when you're in copy mode, if you hold the middle mouse button down, you can drag out an area you want to copy, and then go to the top left part of where you want to paste and right click to paste. So there we go. If you want to copy more than one layer, you can change this number higher, and that will copy this layer and the one above it, and 3 will do the one above that, 4 will do the one above that, etc, etc. Thickness is linked to the shapes you can draw. So if we just switch back to edit mode, get rid of that, and try an oval made of stone. So you can just draw the shape out. I see it's done it again. There we go. I will look into that after the video and fix it, so hopefully by the time you guys get your hands on it, it doesn't do that. And if you wanted to make a square, you can make a square. And the thickness just changes the thickness of the line. So with that done, we'll move over to the panel on the left here. By the way, you can change it to left or right by right clicking on the general settings bit here. Just stick it over there if you prefer, or move it back to the left, up to you. I would probably ignore this bit. I'm probably going to remove this pretty soon. Back in the days where there was only Navigating, this used to tell you where the prefab you opened was in the world, and this just lets you delete the regions. But I'm pretty tight on space on this left bit, so I think I might lose this. This information here is about the prefab itself and is pretty important. So the air blocks defines whether when importing a prefab into the world, the game looks for the air blocks and bring those changes with it, or ignores them. If it takes them with it, it will reset anything in that area of the world with air. So say there was dirt there instead, it would become an empty space. If it's not ticked, then that dirt would stay where it is. There's another video giving an example of what we mean, so just check the channel out for it. Topsoil, if your prefab has any dirt or fertile land on it, then will it grow grass? And you can select that yes or no. Show direction is just an overview in the editor to show which way the block is rotated. So this is down west, and it gives you all the different options here. Rotation is a bit of a mess in the game at the minute. Things aren't standardized, so you've just got to sort of suck it in, see, and play around with it to get the right ones you want. And decals, we'll go over in a bit because it's linked to the information down here. Layer lets you jump up and down the layer. In fact, let's just quickly open a file. So this brings you one layer up. This brings you 10 layers up. 10 layers up. And this takes you to the top layer. And again, one layer down, 10 layers down, bottom layer. Zoom gives you the ability to zoom in and out on your prefab. So if you've got a massive prefab, you'll probably want a low setting. But if you want to see the detail, you can whack it right up. Selection, blocks and entities. So that affects this area down here. At the moment we're selecting blocks, so that lets us choose different blocks and put them, we've jumped out of edit mode, and put them into the game. Sorry, the prefab. And if you click on entities, it changes this area here, so you can put different entities in. So you can put specific zombies or the cars or animals. And you can change the rotation of how they are in the game if it's, say, a car that you want to point a certain way. For now, we're going to stick with blocks, and that leads us nicely to this part here. So this is a drop down of all the different blocks in the game. There are lots of them. I'm not going to go over each one, but you just want to choose which block you want, and then you can click in the editor to put that block into the prefab. Damage chooses its stated damage in the prefab, so if you want like a wrecked house or something with different layers or different options of destruction, this is where you change it. Rotation, again, which way the block is pointing, but that's not necessarily intuitive. You've just got to give it a go, or go into the game, build the thing you want and export it out and have a look at the rotations to get a feel for it. Meta, again, meta we'll cover when we get down here because there's a bit more information when you get to that bit. And search just lets you search for a block. There you go, all the concretes. Or if you wanted wedges, whatever. So this this area here, layer info, just gives you information on the specific layer of the prefab you're on at the moment. If you want to concentrate on certain blocks, you can not do that. Okay, I'll fix that. But when it does work, you can switch off the painting for each one of these. So if you just wanted to look at, say, the tungsten ore, you could click none and then click the, that's probably why it doesn't work, it doesn't list everything. Click the tungsten ore and it would only draw that part. Block info, so this is probably where you'll be spending a lot of time. If you switch over to info mode, you can have a look at specific blocks, see their type and subtype, class if they've got it, the color that's rendered in the editor. If you click on that, you can change it to whatever you want, and so that you can just customize how your version of the editor looks. You can make sure the grasses are green or the concretes are blue or whatever. So setting a specific rotation can be done here, so we'll just change that to up east for now. Damage, again, what state of decay or damage the block is in. You've got a special one here, decal. So if you set decal, you can change but I should explain what decals are. Decals are just like extra textures in the game. So you've seen the blood on the floor, or the newspaper articles, or the cups and garbage and stuff. So those are decals. This is which face of the block the decal goes against. Usually you'll want top, and this is the different types of decals you can do. So now we've done that, we'll go through the menus. So the first one is file. This is where you do all the stuff to do with the files. You can create a new prefab. Test, set width 50, 50, 50, and that creates a new area. Quick tip for zooming: if you hold the control key and scroll out, you can zoom in and out quickly. If it doesn't work, just click on somewhere in this screen, because it means this area has got focus, and then it'll let you do it. Opening memory. So there's two ways of opening prefabs. The quickest way, and the one you'll probably almost always use, is opening memory. So when you open a file, let's just go for apartment. So this is now transferred into the memory of your computer, and it means things can be done a lot quicker when you're editing. But if you had a massive prefab that was, hundreds of blocks wide and hundreds of blocks deep and lots of blocks high, and you don't have a lot of RAM in your machine, it would crash out. So the alternative to that is opening from the disk, and that just keeps the file on your hard drive, and so you can have much bigger prefabs. The downside is it's a lot slower when you're doing things like changing layers and replacing blocks and stuff. One thing to mention is the folder has to be the prefab folder in the 7 Days to Die game location. You can't save prefabs. Well, you can save prefabs in other locations, but the editor will always load and save to this folder. So if you're going to make backups of your stuff, make sure that this is the live folder and your backups are elsewhere. Yep, so once you're happy with your changes, you can just click save to save the prefab back to that folder. Import cubicle XML, just ignore that. That was something we were working on a while ago, and unless you know cubicle, it's not really going to interest you. Load exported area. So once you've exported an area from inside the game, you can access it. Where have I got one? In your game save folder. So you've got a block backup folder here, inside users. That's me. Oh, I don't have an export file there. Let's try another one. No. No. There we go. So the export file is a .ex file, and you can just double click that to load it in. Let's just jump up. So that's just a random, looks like grassy area. There's another video on how to insert and export prefabs. Just check out the channel, or I've put links to videos in the forum. Save as lets you just change the name of the prefab when you save it, and this is a list of recently opened prefabs. So over to the next one. If you want to change the options, you go to settings options. This is where you set up the information. You should have already done this because that's in another video. Let's close that. Prefab. So if you want your prefab to appear in the random world stuff, you need to set the XML information for it. So by clicking on this little button here, you get this tab down here, and click it on it again takes it away. Zoning isn't used at the moment. Rotation to north, don't think is used anymore. I think that was taken out. Height offset, so if you have a basement in your prefab, you'll want to put this, say the basement was 5 blocks tall, you put 5 in there, and that just means that when the prefab's inserted, it will drop 5 layers compared to the height of the ground when the game's creating the prefab. Condition isn't used at the minute. Allowed biomes is the biomes that the prefab's allowed to spawn in. So say you just only wanted it in the Burnt Forest, you just click that one, leave it be. Again, which townships it's allowed to appear in. I don't think age is used at the minute, and disallowed biomes is just the opposite of biomes. So say you wanted it to appear in everything but the burnt forest, you could disable that, or you could tick each one of those, same thing. Spawner, so if you want zombies to appear when the prefabs spawned for the first time, you can set it there. Trigger how many blocks away from the player is when the spawns jump in. So don't set this too low, or they'll just spawn in around the player, and people don't usually like that. And the size of the spawn area for the zombies. So think of it as just a cube of how large an area the zombies can spawn in. So if we hide that, that should auto drop down hard block now as well. Copy layer, so let's just open it. Copy layer, if you wanted to copy this layer to other layers, you can say copy layer 3 from 3 to 10. Click OK, and now we have the same thing up to layer 10, and then changes start to happen. Let's just undo that because we don't want that. Replace block ID. So this is quite handy if you've changed your mind on a block and you just want to update everything. You can choose which block you're going to replace. So let's go with Arc Cube, and we're going to replace it with air conditioners. So this tick box means only look on this specific layer and make the changes here. If you untick that, it will look through the entire prefab and do every layer. Keep rotation, meta, and damage. You can pretty much ignore that now because I've replaced it with this here, which gives you a lot more control. So the metadata, the stuff down here. In fact, no, let's go through the metadata first. So if we switch over to info mode, and let's find an interesting block. Yeah, door block. So because this is a type of door, you can set the meta on it to closed, open, or locked, and that will obviously change the way that the door gets spawned in, so it can be closed, open, or locked. You've also got the options of meta 2. What affects meta 2? I think it's lights. So let's see if we can find a light. What lights are in here? Here we go. So this is a light. For the light, you can change the meta to say it's off lit or lit 2. The difference between lit 1 and lit 2. Don't use lit 1. It takes a lot more CPU or GPU processing power and doesn't give anything better than lit 2. So just stick to lit 2 to being on or off. Does that get a meta 2? No, it doesn't. Hold on 1 second. Let's find out. Oh, it's for decals. Okay, so yeah, we've been through that before with the decals. If you change the damage to decal, you can get the Meta 2 stuff there. So, say you've changed this block to have a decal of news flu on the top, and you've got it set in 10 different places around the prefab. If you wanted to change that, you could go to the prefab, choose siding, what's it called, tan old wood, replace it with the same block, the entire prefab. I'll just change your custom. So we want to keep all the rotations, we want to keep the damage because that sets the decal, we want to keep the meta to the top, but we just want to change the flu. And you're going to have to guess which one's which, because at the minute it doesn't load in which types of meta. So let's just change it to 8. Click OK, and then when we click on the block again, you can see it's changed to blood dark rather than news flu. And that would happen throughout the entire prefab. Add rows lets you add a row either at the top or the bottom of the prefab. So add at the bottom, yes, you see it appears there. Add at the bottom, no, it appears at the top. Columns again for the left and right. Import prefab lets you place another prefab inside this prefab. Just go. There you go. So we've copied in another prefab. So if you're making like a town or something huge, you could make all the assets individually and just import them one at a time into the final thing. Add layer, same as rows and columns, but for layers of the prefab. And remove layers does exactly the same thing. Rotate, you must have a square prefab size to be able to rotate stuff. And it's a bit hit and miss, to be honest, because of the way that the game handles rotations and how it's not standardized. It can be very dodgy. But you can flip them horizontally and you can flip them vertically, no matter the size of the prefab. Invert height swaps top to bottom, so inverts the height. And remove column left, right, top and bottom lets you remove the columns and rows. So if any of these items have a shortcut there, that's what you can use in the game, sorry, in the editor. So F5, F6, F7, F8. Where are we? Reset all the metas and all the damage to 0. So if you've exported something or you want to reset because you're redoing, you can use those to quickly do it. And ignore anything down here, those are just for me when I'm messing around. Oh, you might want list blocks in prefab, so that gives you all the blocks if you just wanted to know what's being used inside and the amounts that have been used. Editor, edit mode, info mode and copy is the same as these here, just a different way of getting to it. You can use this to clear the regions for any of your saves. And if you're in Navigain, I think you can add a player location, but this stuff's been superseded by the in-game commands. Just messing about here, if you're wanting to create a maze, you can do. Just make it a bit simpler. And if you wanted a room in the center that's always there, copy to clipboard. We don't have a prefab big enough. There you go. So that just quickly generates a maze, and you can do the same for dungeons if you just wanted to quickly generate a basic layout. Shape is same as down here, and helper again you can pretty much ignore because this stuff's for me when I'm messing around. Launch game will launch the game, the non-EAC version, so if you're getting a black screen when you start the editor, just come in and use the launch game button to do what you're doing. Right guys, that was just a quick overview. Oh, I suppose we can go through some controls. So when you're in edit mode, if you want to paint or copy a large area for blocks, you can go to the editor screen, hold down the middle block and draw out an area, and that will fill with whatever you've got selected here. So I add air there. If I wanted dirt in the center, just done it again. Yeah, so if it doesn't select the first time, just do it again. But I'll have a look at that after the video. If you don't have a middle mouse button, you can hold shift and left click and do the same thing. And what else? I can't think of anything else you'll need, but if you guys have any questions and want me to do a video on a specific thing, just let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Alright guys, cheers.